Yeah, very good evening, Utkarsh Luthra. And before I start your introduction, I would like you to tell about yourself and what are your so far experiences with not just UI UX and in general too.
Very good evening, Ayush. I am Utkarsh Luthra and I am the founder and CEO of Medoc. We are a health IT company which is currently focusing on creating ease of access to financial medicine and family medicine. But other than that, I am also a UI UX designer, a brand designer, and a Flutter developer. I also work in the Mon stack. So yeah, that is like roughly speaking things that I do. I work in freelance as well. I've tutored 650 plus people in CodeChef as an educator. Yeah, that pretty much sums up.
Uh, and talking about our first conversation, we had our first conversation in Vaad Vivad, and it was a lovely conversation regarding how the debate works. But coming back to now,
And I defeated him.
yeah, like apparently he was the first and I was the second. So yeah, talking about the UI UX part, I am curiously interested about this part of yours specifically because the reason being I am intrigued by the how designs works. So just tell me that what exactly is the job profile of a UX developer, and of course the elephant in the room, what is the salary of it?
So overall, see the thing is, first of all, talking about salary ka thing, you can, as a UI UX designer, you have a lot of scope. Okay, and what that means is that you can get self-employed and work for freelance and get a lot of money. There is no upper limit to that. But if you're talking about in corporate, a UI UX designer can get up to a 15 to 20 to even 25 lakhs per annum package, depending on how good you are and what type of company you are joining. What exactly UI UX is, for example, if you open any application, this meeting over here is happening in Google Meet. The way every single icon is arranged, the way all of these frames are arranged, and the way you are interacting with these things, that is what is the responsibility of a UI UX designer to work on. If you look at this, Google Meet has a very, very simple UI. On the other hand, Zoom has a very intuitive but very it has more features and hence it has to manage those things a lot. So they have different dialog boxes, they have different uh, kind of menus, they have different kind of options for everything. In Google Meet, it's very simple. There is one single place where you go for all your settings. In Zoom, on the other hand, you will see there are different options for your mic and speaker. There are different options for your camera right on that icon itself.
Yeah.
So all of those things are created by UI UX designers. We are given a prompt that we want this kind of application. We are given a prompt what kind of style do we want it to be in, and then accordingly we're supposed to figure out on the basis of research from different user data and user sets that if your user is of certain age and certain region and certain proficiency in computers, then you should design it such.
Okay.
That is why Google is so simple. Other than this, in UI UX, what you're supposed to understand is that your UI part is very, very important. Just think of this like this: ki once you have when you're designing something, what you want is it should look good first. Okay, but a lot of people what they do is just for that look good factor, they put too many heavy elements on it, and and things get very problemsome for the developers. So as somebody who has a lot of empathy for developers, I how it works is that I try to while designing itself, I try to keep designs such that it is easier to code.
Okay.
Even when I'm designing an application, I'll try to keep it very, very organized. So organized that when somebody is going to develop it later, just by looking at the grade of it, just by looking at the number of elements and the names of the elements, you can figure out exactly how do you code it. Other than this, the tool itself, like if you take Adobe XD or if you take Figma, both those tools are very, very powerful. It has a lot of features and usually people don't even use a lot of them, and it is very important to know exactly when to use which feature and when to use what kind of arrangement of things. To make it look good is one thing. In one way, in one sense, it is the easiest part of UI UX. UI is much easier than the UX part. Stands for user experience. What will your user experience? How will he interact with your application? When he interacts with your application, what will happen? The animations of things, the way things are supposed to flow, the way menus are supposed to be designed, all of that. That is your entire experience. I'll not go too much elaborate on it,
Uh,
otherwise we'll have to skip a few questions.
that is a great detail of insights about the UI UX. I would have asked that how it separates from graphic designing part, but I'm very much clear the way you explained it. But still, like I would ask you to know that I am myself work in the film industry, and there is sort of this VFX and the graphic designing part of that. That too interacts with how user sees the element. So how do you keep that separation of the UI UX part from that?
Okay. So graphic design is of multiple types. Okay. If you talk about, say, brand design, while you're designing a brand, your main focus is on appeal. It should look good. It should give a certain message. It should attract the user towards you. Like if I'm designing a logo, say if I talk about this logo, okay, I'm trying to make it such that it needs to be very, very comfortable for the user. And for example, if I'm talking about a logo design, okay, brand design mein hi, there is this thing called designing a logo, right? And what happens is when you're designing a logo, you have to think of a lot of factors. Like first of all, who is going to see the logo? What is the message you want to send to the user, to the person who will be looking at it? What kind of arrangements do you want that logo to be in? How do you not want the logo to look? And so that is one side. In UI UX, on the other hand, everything is based on how you think you want things to work. There is a problem solving element to it. Okay, like for example, if I'm the UI UX designer in Instagram, and I am given the task to design for the notes wala part. Okay, so for that notes, there are plenty of ways to solve that. Okay, I could have kept the person's display picture very small and a nice log with note over there. Okay, I could have kept the display picture above it and people can click on it just like stories. You can click on it and instead of a story, just a note opens up. But what was decided in the end was that if the note is long, it will be below it, like over covering it, but below it. If it is large, it will just be like a bubble on the top of it, right? So that is based on utility, solving a problem.
Okay.
So similarly of Snapchat, okay, a designer would look at it and they'll say it's very easy to design. But just think of it. Once you open Snapchat, what Snapchat wants is that the user, first thing that user gets to see is a camera. Okay, because their camera is absolutely amazing. Okay, so they're trying to display the best feature they have first.
Okay.
Just think of the nav bar of Snapchat. Okay, the bottom nav bar of Snapchat has camera in the center. On the on the leftmost corner, there is their map, which is again very, very unique. You will not find a map like that on Google Maps. It has all kinds of graphs. It has all kinds of regions and like terrain and everything. And on the other end, the most comfortable end for a user, they have the discover section. In the middle of these two things, there is Snap. Okay, now this is very easy to access. It is very easy to go and open things. Then UX part here is you're interacting with the screen. You're just nobody clicks on the button. Everybody just swipes, right? Hardly anybody does that clicking on the thing. And similarly, even with Snaps, if you look at it, you click on it and it will open up, right? There is a section on the other end on the right. You click on that and you can see all the chats. But then after that, there is a lot of math included in that when it's a chat and everything happens. So I'll not make it very boring in that sense, but you get the point, right? In UI UX, you're trying to solve a problem. You are trying to create a system where users will be interacting with it. It is
Hmm.
more engineering focused, and
Okay.
it's like a merge between engineering and design.
That makes sense. That makes sense. But on the same note, like when we talk about the problem solving part of that and using the tools, as you said, suppose I place five graphic designers, then they would have each would have different creativity. But when we are talking about the application, हम user का experience अच्छा करना चाहते हैं. In that case, if you place six UI UX developers, then what is that key element that would separate each of them?
Okay. So first of all, when graphic designers design an application, what I'll assume is I'm saying somebody who has no experience with UI UX, okay,
हाँ.
and somebody who has experience in say creating posters and
Yeah.
beautiful creative stuff with graphic design, right?
Hmm.
So the first difference would be they would not be able to understand the utility of certain things. They would
Okay.
not have proper knowledge of the number of ways you can arrange components in. They would not have a proper understanding of just the way users interact with devices in today's
Hmm.
time. And that is very, very crucial because the way users interact with a given device varies a lot on the device itself, first of all. A UI design is not just designing for a mobile phone. He's designing for mobile phones, web, and desktop, different layouts, tablets, right? So
Hmm.
there's a lot of, I'll just say there's a lot of math included in there. Okay, when you are solving as a UI designer. So the main difference you see, and what I can assume is a graphic designer will make a very, very beautiful UI. Absolutely like the best possible UI. But when it goes into development, developers will not like that.
Ah, that makes sense. And on the same note, suppose uh, your screen froze. Okay, mine.
And that designer looks very, very beautiful on one top left corner. Okay, it is perfect with the theme, but it is very difficult to access that on your screen, and you want the user to access that multiple times, and that gets very difficult. So there's a lot of things you need to keep in mind while keeping just one thing there. Just imagine Instagram in the last 1.5 2 years has changed the layout of the bottom nav bar and the chat section and everything so many times. The
हाँ.
explore section went up, shop
हाँ.
section came in, reels went from the section of reels has
Hmm.
changed a lot. After that, even the settings page has changed a couple of times on the top, and below that there used to be things. Now it has
Hmm.
one reel, some posts, another reel,
हाँ.
some posts, another reel. Right? So there's a lot of research that has gone into it. Different users were sent different sets of UI, and then they calculated what kind of interference happened in that.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of things that go into. I'm not saying that graphic design is inferior or superior to it or anything. It's just a different. It's a different job profile completely.
हाँ.
When you're in graphic design, you are designing beautiful things. As a UI UX designer, I would not be able to design the kind of things that a lot of graphic designers do. It is marvelous. The command on the tool as a graphic designer is very much. Whereas for a
हाँ.
UI UX designer, the command on the tool is not as important as the understanding of how things are supposed to be placed. Yes, I'll move on to your next question.
My question would be an add-on to this itself. Like ये तो हो गई बात की UI UX and graphic designer की. But suppose I place the two UI UX developers और दोनों सेम जैसे skill sets carry करते हैं and the application usage, then how would the separation exist? क्योंकि यूजर का एक्सपीरियंस दोनों अच्छा बनाना चाहते हैं, तो दोनों के केस में बिल्कुल सेम नहीं बन जाएगा टेम्पलेट दैट यूजर को ये पसंद आएगा ये पसंद आएगा. एंड इवन इफ दे बोथ मेक दे वुड मेक द सेम एप्लीकेशन. सो हाउ कुड दैट बी द डिस्टिंग्विश फैक्टिंग फॉर अ यूआई यूएक्स डेवलपर अगर इस फील्ड के अंदर वो आ रहा है.
Okay, so that is actually a very interesting question. If you place two UI UX designers together, you will still get different results for a very simple reason. You place two writers together, give them the same prompt. Will they write the same story?
No, they won't.
No,
But
right? You tell two filmmakers, you take two directors, okay, creatives, okay, tell them the same story, give them the same script. The camera angles will be very different. You give Christopher Nolan the script of Batman and you give, say, Karan Johar the script of Batman, you suddenly see Batman becoming a romantic movie, Shah Rukh Khan doing whatever. So that is one thing, that creatives, when you're talking about creative professions, every person has a different way of thinking things. But if you're talking about the fact that whether or not people will have the same template, because user experience to barabar karna hai, अच्छा करना है, right? So in a perfect world, even in a perfect world, I'll say actually, that is not true. Because user experience, the best user experience is not a particular single thing. You cannot do that. You cannot set an algorithm for it, is what I'm saying. So this is not a profession which AI can very well do it, no doubt, but there'll still have to be some human tweaks to it. But the thing is, just think of this in the sense that when two creatives are working together, their output is much better versus when they're working against each other.
But you raised a very interesting point here. Like when you talk about कि इसका कोई fixed algorithm नहीं है, then how do you handle as a UX developer those subjectivity? कि किसी एक को ये design पसंद आएगा, like for example किसी को dark theme पसंद है, किसी को light theme है, तो तुम कैसे?
You never know the right answer. You never know the right answer the first time. Okay, you try different things. Okay, a lot of times this happens that when I'm sketching, the first part of making an application or making any design is to sketch it. Okay, so when I'm sketching it, the thing that I sketched looks very good, but then when I took it on actual Figma or Adobe XD, things look not as good. Then I make tweaks to it. You need to find a balance basically. Okay, you can make absolutely amazing UI with very shitty UX. Okay, and on the other hand, you can make very good UX but very bad UI. All government websites basically, they have amazing UX, they are very simple to use, but their UI is very bad. Now they're improving on the UI. So that is what you have to find that balance somewhere. That somewhere you'll have to compensate with some things, somewhere you have to improvise some things, you'll have to bring the colors and all of these things together. Your question was?
My question was basically like कि ऐसे होता है कि when you are creating a design, then what is the chance of getting this bias कि तुम अपना subjective opinion डाल दो कि मुझे अच्छा लग रहा है तो बाकियों को भी अच्छा लगेगा. So how do you handle that subjectivity?
Subjective. So पहले से subjective opinion तो रहता ही थोड़ा सा, ठीक है. अपना design as a designer, you will have some amount of subjectiveness there. But the thing is, the way you handle that is you test of different variants of things. Okay, as in if I'm keeping the button here, there are 7-8 ways to keep that button. I'll try to do all of those things iteratively. Okay, and then uske baad then I'll move to the next thing. Then when I show it forward to somebody else, some users, when it goes into alpha, beta testing, then we realize that it is not working. And this is not a problem which happens on the ground level. This happens on every level. Again, Instagram, they have changed the layout of their application so many times. That is purely because some UI UX designers thought this looks very good, so they put it there. And then they saw that users did not like it very much. Remember when Instagram had this very long layout for posts, where your post is basically taking the entire page, reels format. That thing, just think of it from a UI designer or a graphic designer. That looks very beautiful, but it did not feel very Instagram.
In fact, you do not see the scroll option नहीं रहेगा, फिर वो ऐसा हो जाएगा pages देख रहे हो आप.
And it just felt very restricting for some reason. I don't know. I'm not getting the right word there. So you can always get that. Sometimes it will work, sometimes it will not. That is the main.
Basically, it is all about the how much data you feed. Either it is human or chatbot GPT. Are you saying?
Yes, definitely. Data is king. Data is king everywhere.
And on the same note, like again, I am fluctuating between a filmmaking and a graphic designer aspect of this. So, so if a filmmaker, as you take the example of Christopher Nolan, अगर उसने कोई फिल्म बना रही है, तो उसका एक ना टेम्पलेट होता है थीम की, ये उसकी फिल्म है, पता लग जाता है वो टेम्पलेट देख के. और उस केस में तुम्हारा क्या बनता है दैट एज अ यूएक्स डेवलपर उत्कर्ष लूथरा, व्हाट इज योर की एलिमेंट जिससे पता लग जाएगा कि ये तुम्हारे डिजाइन है?
Array, if I tell that, it will be a problem for me. But okay. So the first thought that I have is the bottom nav bar. Should it be there or should it not be there? Okay. My main focus, usually when I design things, my main focus is that it should be very simple to use. Like it should be so simple to use that user doesn't need a guide for it. I personally prefer to not add bottom nav bars or navigation at all. अगर हो सके, I would love to keep it a single thing. Okay, for example, I was supposed to design an application which had 3 or 4 functionalities. It took me a day or two extra to figure out how would I ignore that bottom nav bar, how to make it such that things look good, they look functional, but all those 4 features are together in one single set. So that is one thing that I try to focus on. But sometimes the bottom nav bar, the navigation sections and everything, they become inevitable. And at that time, you have to add it. So in that also, I try to keep things very organized. My designs are always very organized. So if you ask me what is my template, I think what is the one thing that you'll know that it is my application, it has to be organized. It has to be very, very organized. And even to the level that even if there are screens that are empty and everything, no, when you're doing a design for any application, for any client at all, you don't just make screens which have things. You also have to make screens like for error screens, for loading screens, all of those screens, right? So even those are very, very organized, and I'll have sections for that where randomly things work out and go into that. So my UX part is my strength mostly. UI wise, I'm still learning the UI wala things from a lot of experienced UI developers and everything. But UX will be very.
I think the UX part comes from the coding itself, coding background being कि मतलब तुम्हें पता कि एप्लीकेशन जब कोड करोगे तो कैसा आएगा वो.
Yes, precisely. I also personally feel that exactly. Whenever I'm developing and like creating a design, usually I'm also thinking backend ki back of the mind ki isko मैं code कैसे करूँगा. So that is one thing. And I've actually done this a lot of times that whenever if I get a client for UI UX, I'll also tell that person that I've created design. You want to create the code as well? I'll do that as well. So that also works very beautifully.
Acha, on the same note, as you said about organized designs, so tell me a bit brief about कि कैसे तुम structure करते हो designs, and even if on Figma or whatever platform you use, there is a flow chart because क्योंकि designs multiple loading screens बनती है. This is application, mobile, web. So how do you structure all these things, and what is your mindset behind creating this all?
Okay, so a lot of developers, what they do is they create. First of all, the thing is you never go on Figma blank. Okay, before you reach to Figma, before you reach to Adobe XD, whatever your application is, software is, you have an idea on paper itself. Okay. And on paper, the way you do that is you list all the features that you want on your application. Okay, and after that, you see what all features will be in what all sections. You divide those into sections. Once that division has happened, you take one of those screens, you divide things into screens and widgets, and whenever you see my design, any design at all, I keep 2 pages. If you're talking about mobile application development, okay, mobile UI UX development, I keep 2 pages. Page 1 is for all my screens. Page 2 is for all my widgets, components which will be repeated. Okay, and so my designs are very organized in the sense that first of all, if I have to put a nav bar, I will design the nav bar. If I have to put a app bar, I design an app bar. If I have to put some cards, I'll design the cards. The smallest elements, I'll design those first. Then I'll move into the larger ones. I'll create pages, and then I'll put those elements into the pages. And then when I figure out that it's not looking very good, I'll go to that particular element, the smaller one. I'll make changes to that element, and then I'll come back to the pages thing. This can take longer because usually what I've noticed a lot of UI designers do is they do things very randomly. Like they go with the flow. They go to the page, you create a page, you put elements in the page, move to the next page. You create elements in that page, you connect those 2 pages, you prototype. But the way I work around is things are already in my mind very clear. Okay. And I work with that first. So on one level, it takes longer But on the other level, when once you get the complete product, it overall time is actually reduced, because once you have to make changes, which you have to make, there is no substitute to that. You have to change things. Making changes for me is much easier now.
Okay.
So that is one thing.
And that sounds like a programming using the Kruskal's algorithm in UI experience. And those who did not get this joke, just Google Kruskal's algorithm, you will know better. So, talking about that same aspect, like how do you balance this sort of creativity and functionality part of that? कि एक तरफ तुम्हें क्रिएटिव भी होना है, द यूएक्स पार्ट ऑफ दैट जिसमें वो उसमें फंक्शनैलिटी ऐड करनी है, एंड द सेकंड द यूआई पार्ट कि ब्यूटीफुल लगे और क्रिएटिव भी लगे, तो दोनों चीज़ों का बैलेंस कैसे आएगा, स्पेशली फॉर द क्लाइंट्स?
You practice, you keep practicing, you get horrible feedback. You get feedback where you are asked to give money back because you designed something that is so bad. That has never happened actually.
Okay.
But well,
hope that does not happen again.
Like, yes, you get very critical feedback, and then you work on that feedback, and then you make something depending on that feedback. More importantly, you get some mentors, you get some ideas, you research it very well. Okay, you need to look at applications in certain ways. You need to look at every application you use. You need to question, if this button is over here, why is it over there? If the particular screen is set in some certain manner, why is it set in that manner? If Instagram is making different changes in every single update, why is it doing that? And do you think that it will actually stay? Well, Instagram is a very good exercise for me. Okay, I learned my UI UX on Instagram. Okay, because Instagram was making so many UI changes, and every other time they would revert back to the previous one. Okay, so I took this into my as an exercise. Every time they would make a change, I would think, for how many weeks will this change actually last? And a lot of times it will not last. I would be correct. But for notes, for example, notes, I was very. I thought this will not work out. I still think that they're eventually going to remove notes. If they don't remove notes, because I hardly see any notes.
Let's write this on a blank paper and see. Hopefully, in next few months, your prediction gets corrected or not.
I mean, for notes, I had this thing, but they have updated notes very beautifully now. Like initially, notes did not look this good. Now notes look much better. So that is one thing. Other than that, and I'll be honest, most of the times I open Instagram is to see कि इसमें कोई UI change नहीं हुआ. But the thing is,
see the dedication level of Mr. Utkarsh. The others would scroll Instagram to just see कि क्या changes आ रहे हैं दुनिया में, किसने क्या profile है.
Scrolling भी चलती है. That also works.
He's like DP छोड़ो, DP बाद में देखेंगे, पहले UI देखो.
That second thing is, what is that question by Devansh?
He says
learning from terrible feedback means trial and error method is short. Question is, how can one gain the strength to accept those terrible feedback? Okay, so to accept those terrible feedback,